See what happens.
Streaming live on YouTube, it says. On mine, anyway.
Yeah, it does on mine too.
Here we are. We are live on YouTube. Now I just got to tell the whole rest of the world that we're here. We are. We are live on YouTube. Yeah, I just got to tell the whole rest of the world that we are. And I got to turn the sound off. Live. Yeah, I just got to tell the whole rest of. There we go. That'll stop that. You guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right. Let me send a message out. We'll let people catch up with us. Share that. That would be Kevin ringing the bell. Let me go back. While I'm doing that, I'm going to do a screen thing and play an intro. So you guys might want to mute mics or just stay quiet in the background. Well, that didn't work. Okay. Just about done. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to BC Hornet Sports Roundtable version. What is this? Our third attempt, counting the test that we've done. Tonight, we've got Coach Jared Hoots with us, Kevin Dieterle, Aaron Surratt, Steve Surratt, and a special guest tonight, taking Nick's chair tonight. Not a big chair to fill, by the way. David Phelps joining us tonight. And I hope people are catching up with us on YouTube because we had to punt. I did testing this week and everything worked just fine until I decided to go on the air. And so we're hoping people will catch up with us on YouTube. If not, we'll put it out there for them to watch later. But quite a week. Some things starting to happen in sports. People are kind of getting antsy about the sports out there. I have forgot the last two times to give a NASCAR update. Well, there's a reason, because the big story didn't happen until this last week. They've had 3 iRaces out there on NASCAR, and Denny Hamlin's won 2 of them. Timmy Hill won 1 of them, but the big one this week was
Kyle Larson.
Kyle Larson basically used the N-word on his intercom talking to his spotter, and officially today has been released by Chip Ganassi Racing. So he lost all of his sponsors, which those won't carry over to anybody else, and he's lost his ride. So Ganassi Racing will be getting somebody else to fill that spot. And this was the last year of his contract. Any comments on that?
Yeah, well, it's easy to replace a guy who's going to make a lot of money, especially when you go there. And the thing with NASCAR right now is there is so Larson isn't old, but in the age of NASCAR right now, he is getting old, and so there's a ton of young blood waiting to come up. So he's just you do something like that, hit the bricks, kid. We'll see you later, and we'll pick up another kid who's going to be cheaper next year. We can sign, under a rookie contract for 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you talk about a talent pool, and a lot of it's happened because of iRacing. That it's been a huge thing out there with iRacing, and one of Hendrick's drivers had never been in a car until he got into a NASCAR car. So, but big news, and there's words. I know you guys grew up in this environment that, basically there were words you were not supposed to use anytime, anywhere. And with all the publicity out there, that's one word that shouldn't be used, and you need to be conscious. You can't turn, I guess he's learning a valuable lesson. You can't turn those things off and on when you want to. It's kind of like we can't tell kids, you can't turn it on if you're not practicing it. And so if you're practicing bad language in a lot of spots, it's going to come out. And in this case, absolutely killed him.
Well, how many guys now are, we're going back 10 years and we're finding stuff on their Facebook or Twitter, of just very, borderline things, and the media is getting a hold of that stuff. So, just a total bonehead, crazy use of that word, which you're never okay to use it. But my goodness, that's alive. Wow.
Yeah. And if he had used it in car, anybody had used it in car in a regular race over the intercom, everything's monitored. I don't know why you wouldn't think this would be either. Any other comments from other people?
I did see that today, and there was some speculation by at least one NASCAR writer that he would have been in line to maybe take Jimmy Johnson's spot over at Hendricks in the 48 car, and beyond the fact that that's definitely not going to happen for him, like we said, he may not get another job again in NASCAR. That's a costly mistake to learn, and just thinking about the general demographics of folks that watch NASCAR, that could be a really interesting way for maybe some folks to see the seriousness of some of the language that we know still is used, maybe not in public as much, but in private in the South, maybe some folks that'll catch their attention a little bit in a good way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Anyone else?
Fortunately, it's almost historically proven out to be, you use language like that in whether it's even an athletic setting or even an entertainment setting, it's a death sentence for your career. I mean, you can count the number of guys that have used language like that or made inferences like that, and it's ended their careers.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, like we preach it to our kids all the time, to, our players, that, what you put out on social media can come back and haunt you. Whatever you put out there on the web, somebody can find it. The old saying, whatever you do in the dark will eventually come to the light. And obviously, this came out right now. And, I watch NASCAR for the first couple laps, see if anybody crashes, and at the end, see if anybody crashes. But on any sports stage or a public or just a human stage, you can't be using that type of language.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I wanted to talk about the last few weeks, a great part about this is NASCAR is one of the few sports that you can transfer over to the video. I don't know if you guys have watched any of it online. It's pretty realistic, except for the fact that they get a reset on repairing their car completely once or twice per race. But as far as what you're seeing on TV, it looks real. And from what we're hearing from the drivers, it's feeling real, and some things are going good with that.
Yeah, it's amazing what they do with technology. I saw that, what the races look like, and I just kind of correlate that to if you go to any probably major college football, what the quarterback sees now. I mean, they put them in headgear and the virtual of reading a defense, and the same thing from a linebacker perspective. They give them what offense is out there and what call they need to make and what they think is coming. I mean, it's amazing what technology can do to help, enhance your sports sense. I mean, growing up, I played a lot of football, baseball, and basketball on PlayStation or whatever the game is. And I think that's helped me in my coaching aspect of trying to recognize what the other team's trying to do or trying to predict what's going on there.
It's a big thing in sports right now. And so with that's our NASCAR. Kevin, you still there? Either you're all green and the green background's getting you there, and all I can see is players, or are you there?
Nope, I'm here. Sorry, man. I just had to step away for a minute. I was listening. I just didn't want to be that guy.
Remember what I said last week, that when that happens, that he's reclining in his recliner, and then all of a sudden he just kind of pops back in.
I'm at the kitchen table, so I had to go to the bathroom. I'm not going to lie about it.
We appreciate you not taking us with you.
We've all seen that, right?
Yeah. The name I was trying to come up with last week on the tight end for the Chargers was Kellen Winslow, who was a multi-sport athlete in college. And I believe he played basketball and chose football. So that was my pickup from last week. We also talked about the recruiting things for college, and this just pertains to spring sports the way I'm understanding. Is that what's everybody else is hearing?
Yeah, I was looking at that a little bit before we started today, and I've got the article here from the NCAA. And essentially what they did is they granted all student athletes the ability to have an extra year of eligibility, but it's up to the institutions to decide what they want to. And the institutions are not required to provide aid at the same level. So just because a baseball player had a 3/10 scholarship doesn't mean they have to give it, but they can. And there's also the NCAA Student Assistance Fund that institutions can use to get money if they do want to provide aid at that level. The one other kind of big thing, at least for baseball, is there is a limit on how many athletes who are allowed to have on scholarship at any level, and they did vote to increase that for baseball. But all the other spring sports, they don't have that limit, and so they can just retain them if they want to. And the other thing, again, just little pieces here, but students usually have a 5-year period that they can utilize. And so not only did they grant them an extra year of eligibility, they granted those seniors an extra year. And so basically they have 6 years then to be varsity athletes for 4 of those now 6 years for this group.
So they could walk out with a master's degree all paid for by the school.
Absolutely.
Yep. I did a little bit of research on that today too. And I couldn't remember last week when we talked about how many scholarships baseball have to give, and they have 11.7 scholarships to give in college at the D1 level. And they can carry a roster of 35 players, and 27 of them can be on athletic aid, is what it says in the article that I read. And it said there's no roster limits. And they said a senior coming back next year can receive the same amount of aid that they received for this year. For example, like if you were on a half scholarship, you could only receive a half scholarship for next year. But they said, in the article that I read, it put a big damper on, what college coaches, can do, because like I know Wisconsin said that their senior athletes are just done. They can't come back. I saw that they're not going to pay for them to come back for baseball. And so it really puts a hamper on the college coach itself, because now you got to figure out where you're going to come up with the extra money because you promised this freshman this, let's say a half a scholarship, and now he gets a half a scholarship, but where are you going to come up with the money for the rest of them? Because they said they're going to have to talk to boosters or raise money. And then with the financial crunch they got, it's going to be a problem. The other thing that they said was going to hamper it is that the Major League draft is only going to be 5 rounds this year. So therefore, in a normal draft, there's 1,200 players that come out of college baseball, or it could be up to 1,200. Well, this year's only going to be low as about 100 players, because you got to factor in the high school players, that could go straight to the Major League Baseball now. The coaches have big decisions on, what they're going to do. And be honest, they also said that NCAA may allow transfers. Seniors could transfer if they want to. So I think there's going to be a lot of brutally honest conversations with a lot of people. And I think about, my own situation playing baseball for 4 years at Mac. If you had say a teaching job, offered to you, do you take that teaching job, or do you play another year of baseball? Where you have to pay for it yourself. So I think there's a lot of questions out there. I think it's good for the seniors that they have that chance, but I think it's going to put the college coaches in a lot of numbers crunch. And with this economic crunch we'll probably be facing, it's going to be hard to come up with that money.
Coach Phelps, any thoughts on that?
I also think Jared made a good point about the high school seniors that have the talent to come out, and all those kids are missing their senior year of high school. Those kids that could potentially have been drafted and went into the farm system as well. How many of those kids are not going to get drafted now? How many of those kids that potentially could have shined during this spring and got drafted during that multiple round thing instead of a 5-round draft? They could have went in the 7th or 8th round or whatever it might have been and made a minor league squad somewhere. I mean, how many of those kids have missed out on that opportunity too, and now have to go to college? So even more kids are going to enter into that freshman situation and having a limited amount of scholarships, which I've always questioned how few scholarships baseball gets in general anyway. I mean, that is a tiny amount of scholarships to give to 35 kids on your roster. 11.7 seems very arbitrary in the amount of scholarships that you give. But I really think it's going to put college coaches and those athletes, those senior athletes who don't get a chance maybe to live their dream and be able to get drafted by somebody too and have to go a different route.
You look at the whole mix up of how this changes things. The draft, I had heard the 5 rounds. How many kids are not going to go in that draft? Maybe in the last season of ball that the scouts saw them was an okay year, but potentially this year could have been the year for them. The same way in high school. I mean, Jared, your baseball athletes that might have been looking to go play small college ball, if they didn't get a good look at them last year, they're not going to be able to do that.
Yeah, and they know if those seniors are coming back, they know what they have. In that article I read, it said that, this is not just going to hamper next year. I mean, it's going to have a trickle-down effect on the next 3 years, because now you're really backloaded. In the article I read, LSU said they had up to 12 kids that would probably get drafted in the, normal draft, now he's got to figure out if those 12 come back, what do I do with those? It's just it's going to backload a lot of people, for the next 3 or 4 years so that it gets settled out.
Kevin, thoughts from you?
Well, I think it's just an interesting concept because you have coaches who play for the future, which would be the coaches who say, sorry, seniors, it was a really terrible situation, but you're done. And I'm going to bring these freshmen in that I've been recruiting since 8th grade. And then you have, probably, 2-3 seniors at Vanderbilt, who is just a baseball powerhouse who says, I'm going to get drafted high in the first round, so I'll wait it out, coach, if you're good with it. And coach says, yeah, you had 10 saves for me. So I think it's an interesting concept. It's where is that university at as far as rebuilding a program, building a program? What are your needs at the time? It's not going to be even across the board. It's going to be, what are your needs? Are you building a program, or are you trying to maintain a program?
Or are you trying to win a title? Are you a team that,
Right.
that was planning on going to the tournament and being a strong team? And if you've got, 2 or 3 players that, have good experience and are going to make next year's team that much better, and you have more depth, this could be a chance for maybe some teams that aren't traditionally in that conversation that, can take that extra year of experience and, maybe make a run that they normally don't get to do.
Well, if you're trying to build a program and you've got a good batch of seniors, you're going to retain them all because that success turns into recruits. We see it on every level of college sports. Success breeds recruits wanting to come to my school. And so I'm going to do whatever I need to do to get more recruits down the road. I'm not going to worry about today.
But if you can't bring that next batch of recruits in this fall, this coming year, because you have seniors blocking those scholarships, are you trying to build a program, or are you trying to win? There's going to be teams who are trying to win a national title who keep seniors, and there's teams who are trying to build their program and bring those young studs in as freshmen. So again, I think Vanderbilt's going to be on a different level than ISU, as always. But
yeah, I think the money situation will be the big factor too, because you got SEC schools that actually make money on baseball, where they have their boosters that can pay for those seniors to stay because they're going to make that run for the national championship. Where you got ISU or Bradley, where they don't have those boosters and they'll have a hard time coming up with that extra money. I think it's almost like the rich get richer if those guys don't leave, because they, like those SEC schools that actually make money, will have that money to pay those recruits, where a lot of times the baseball, usually costs the university money because they don't make very much on it.
Well, and just like you're saying, Jared, I think it's going to be your 1AA, your FCS football schools, that category that don't have the big TV contracts, and the Division II schools, and that are going to see probably the biggest hurt from this. Those are probably the ones where the seniors are going to be let, they're going to do what Wisconsin did and say, we appreciate your time, but we don't have the money to pay for your scholarship. So, you're sorry. Thank you. Here's your degree. But that's it.
Well, in the transfer, are they going to allow freshmen to transfer, sophomores to transfer? I've been sitting on the bench, in spring the early part of spring, and I'm biding my time saying, well, when the senior's gone, I'm going to be playing more next year because this person's going to be gone and my arm's going to be needed. If they keep them, they're going to allow that freshman to transfer out.
Yeah, the article I read said that they're taking a look at it this summer, that they allow, normally you have to sit out if you transfer, from Division I to Division I, you got to sit out. If you go down, you're fine, but if you go up, you got to sit out. They were going to take a look at it as a whole, as NCAA, to see if they had allowed this due to the circumstances in the article that I read today about.
Okay.
I think if you add that element into it, especially seniors like in Wisconsin, you cut a group of seniors go. One of the schools are going to be out there saying, well, let's go pick up this senior that Wisconsin is cutting loose. If the NCAA decides, hey, we're going to let all seniors transfer to wherever they want, who's going to, the Vanderbilts of the world that you talked about, Kevin, hey, this Wisconsin has a stud. Let's go get him and put him in our bullpen, and the rich get richer, like Jared said.
Yep.
Add another component to it completely.
Yep.
While we're on the college talk, we talked pre going on the air announcement yesterday late, I believe, because I saw it on Facebook last night. Tanner Susenbach going to Eastern Illinois University, transferring there from McMurray. And Jared, I didn't recognize that you were a McMungo graduate. I'm a McMurray attender for about 2.5 years. So
I was as well. I went 2 years there as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I got my Mac hat on, a little alumni here. It's a collector's item now. So
yeah. When I went there, it was a soccer school. They were winning national NAIA national titles in soccer and in wrestling. Yeah. Baseball, we weren't so good. But and the basketball wasn't so good. But he's transferring to Eastern, and the first person, wasn't it Tony Romo that came out of Eastern? Huh?
Sean Payton, Saints head coach.
Yep. But did Romo come out of there too?
He did.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, Garoppolo, yeah.
Yeah. So going to a program that's recognized, apparently they develop decent people.
Yeah, it's real exciting for Tanner. I know I talked to him, a lot on the phone, and he's jacked. He's a young man that never quit, always worked his tail off, never worried about what other people thought, or he always just kept working. And he's that type of kid that would go to work at Dot for a 8-hour shift and make sure he goes to the weight room afterwards, get his lift in, and go shoot baskets or run routes or whatever. So he's a great example for our kids at Brown County to look up to, as far as something that maybe somebody didn't look at you to start with, but you worked your way up, and now you get to play Division I AA football, which is pretty exciting, coming from a wing T school that we don't pass very much to get that look, and I know he's very excited, and I know he's going to do well up there.
So that was good news. Let's see. I had my question out there. It came up last week because they're talking about the automated umpires for baseball. Are we getting too automated? Is sports using technology too much? Have we taken it too far? Kevin, I know you got an opinion on this.
I never have an opinion on that kind of thing, but I guess I'll throw it out there this time. In baseball, yeah, I think that we're taking it too far. I think that just the thought of an automated home plate umpire just takes away everything that the game was built on. Unfortunately, the game of baseball to me was built on the element of human error. I think that it's just part of the game. Coach Phelps, I know, and Coach Schutz, you guys have never seen a referee or an umpire make a terrible call. That's part of the game, and I think that's the reason we all love the game. If we knew that everything was going to be perfect every single game, then you could almost, Vegas wouldn't exist, because you would know exactly what team should win because every call is going to go the right way. And I think that with baseball, especially, I think it needs to stay as whole and as pure as it can possibly be, which is funny. I feel like I'm talking tongue in cheek here, because to this group, I sent a small little link before. Baseball is also thinking about turning to a different rule in extra innings, which I find really interesting, because it's not pure and it's not baseball, but it is something I would definitely like to discuss later on in the show. But as far as looking at replays and electronic strike zones, I'm just not down with it. I think it slows the game down, especially replays in baseball. Everybody's trying to speed the game up, but replays slow it down to me. So
who are you going to argue with?
That's a fact. True. That'll definitely be bothering me also.
Well, you couldn't argue balls and strikes to begin with, though.
Well, right. That's debatable.
Yeah.
Not in a way that slows down the game anyway. You can bark at an umpire from.
Never argued a ball or strike, right?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Never. Not one time.
Or Kevin Dieterle, or me. Anybody on this call. Yeah. To me, are we going to get a cookie cutter strike zone? I mean, to me, that uniqueness of the strike zone, based on the umpire, based on the angle that they're sitting at, to me, made the game, you had to adapt. So if we've got this strike zone set up there, and I know every time I walk up exactly what's going to be a strike, or a closer idea to it, then I'm laying off of some pitches that on a given day I might have to swing at because the umpire's calling that pitch.
Yeah, and I'm going to throw just Greg Maddux, and he's a Cub, so I'm not a fan, but I love him. He's literally the best pitcher in my mind in the entire league of all time. That guy never would have had the career he had if there was an electronic strike zone, because he was so good and he understood the umpires so well that they'd go 6 inches outside the zone because they knew that he could throw it there every time and his catcher never moved the mitt. So Greg Maddux, just go ahead and delete his career, delete his Hall of Fame career, because, that's like steroids before or after the steroid era. I mean, it's just not, you can't compare the two. So, that's my argument for electronic strike zones. You just got to you can't even think about it.
Yeah, I did. So I looked at today to see what it was, and it's actually like a satellite dish that sets up on top of the stadium, and it has, the technology to read the strike zone. There's actually a physical umpire down there, and it'll relay the signals from the satellite to the umpire's ear, and he called the balls and strikes. But I think the one thing, like on my end, is, being a former catcher, I think you're gonna get really lazy catcher play, because I'm sure Coach Phelps could attest to this. How many times that he gave a strike to a pitcher or a catcher just because of the way that the catcher caught it? I think that's an important of the element. Like Kevin was talking about with Greg Maddux, you're going to lose good catchers because, they can just sit back there and, take it off their chest and, it's going to be a strike. They don't have to catch the ball in the proper form anymore, and I think you're going to lose the catcher umpire relationship too. I know that's a huge thing in baseball, is the catcher umpire relationship. I think you're taking away part of the game by doing that. I'm not in favor of it. I'm okay with a replay now and then, just to, help out the situation to get it right. I'm sure most people want to get the call right. I'm okay with those replays. The challenge, but I don't want a robot umpire behind the plate for sure.
I think it takes away from what the game was about. I umpire high school baseball, and Eric Grady and I do most of our games together. We're two different kind of umpires, and we talk all the time. He and I ride together on our way to games, and he's more of a pitcher's umpire, and I'm more of a hitter's umpire. He gives just a little bit more of the black, maybe a little farther sometimes than I do. But I think that's part of the game, adjusting to what the umpire is going to give you. And if that kid can hit that spot continuously over and over again, sometimes they get another half inch outside, when they need it. It's human nature. If a kid hits a spot that you think, holy crap, that was a big pitch and can hit that spot, it's impressive. And the human error of the game, as a coach and an umpire, I understand it. It's part of the game, learning to adapt, learning to overcome things that go against you. It's all part of it. And changing the baseball umpire part, I think, would dramatically change the quality of the game. I'm with Jared. I think, outside call it second base. Sure. Let's get that right. Maybe, but balls and strikes, it just can't change, or it will change the game tremendously.
Aaron?
I somebody's got to do it. So I'll be that voice of dissent for at least a minute. I guess I think it more of a pitcher's mentality, and I pitched in Little League because I had control, and I wasn't going to walk a bunch of guys. I wasn't really that great, I don't think, in hindsight. But I could throw strikes, which when you're 10, sometimes good enough. But I think of it as a pitcher, and you throw a pitch, and it's especially with, the K zone that we have now on TV, and I was just looking at a pitch that Dakota Hudson threw this past season, right down the middle of the plate. Center, and the umpire calls it a ball, and it's the first pitch of an at bat. And so you start, instead of having an 0-1 count and you have an advantage the whole at bat, you now go to being behind the whole at bat. And I guess I just think about it from a pitcher's perspective. If you throw a strike and you don't get credit for it, I just find that hard. And I think and again, this is a little bit of bias for me as well, but I think about somebody like Matt Carpenter. I think I was reading, I think it was last fall, that like no batter in the entire game of baseball had more balls called strikes against him than Matt Carpenter. So somebody who's got a really good batting eye as a batter and knows what a strike looks like and consistently gets hurt by that human element. I don't see that as fair either. I mean, I do appreciate the idea that you do have to adjust to an umpire and make in-game adjustments. And that is a beautiful part of the game. I will give all you credit that brought that up, but I don't know. I like to see things done right. I'll be honest. Sometimes that bothers my family a little bit, that I'm really picky about doing things right. But I don't know. I'm not totally against the idea of an automatic robot umpire if we're getting calls right.
Well, you can just blame me, the gene pool, for being right, your grandpa and your grandma and everybody else, because that's where it comes from. My question is, are we going to have the same strike zone for everybody? Are they going to measure players? Are they going to take a photograph of that player ahead of time, put it in the computer? Because again, Coach Phelps, do you umpire strike zones from where to where?
Well, I think it's from the chest to the knee. It's maybe mid chest, right below the numbers, so to speak. It's not shoulder to knees, like so many say. You can't hit that pitch, unless the kid's throwing 50 miles an hour. You can hit that pitch at your eyes, but get someone hard. You can't hit a pitch, that far above your hands. So
But you can't get a little leaguer to lay off of that.
you can't. You can't.
It's an impossibility.
It just looks so good.
Well, yeah, and I'm trying to refresh my mind here. In your natural stance also, it's not how you're crouching, it's how you step into the box. So some of those that look a little high to some people are actually, in the normal stance, a strike. So again, my question is, how are you going to laser that? Is it going to be per batter? Are they going to have them stand in the box, do a laser of everybody at the front of the season, or what?
On the article I read, it says a 3D Doppler radar dish that adjusts the batter's size and stance.
Okay.
Whatever that is. I don't know.
Okay. The word stance there, they're going to have to define that, because once it gets adjusted, if I squat just a little bit more, bend the knees just a little bit more, I've just shrunk the strike zone down.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. It's no longer just a good thing to put a midget in the ball game.
No. See ball, hit ball.
I think it's a fun debate for people who are baseball purists and people who love to see runs scored in baseball, because I think if you go to that, the hitters have the edge all day, which is kind of conflicting with what Aaron says. I think that the hitters, and don't get me started on Matt Carpenter. I'm the biggest Cardinal fan in the world, but I think he's an idiot, and I think he's terrible. He bats 186. He's a leadoff guy with 30 home runs. You're not doing anything for me. But I think it gives those guys the advantage, because they know exactly what their box looks like. They can go to the video after a game, and they don't have to get ready for Balk Bob Davidson or Joe West. They have to get ready for the computer. So they can look at the computer and say, okay, that pitch I thought was outside, it was right there on the corner. So now I can hammer that to left field next time. I think it's advantage offense all day. I'm a very big pitcher guy. I want to see pitchers dominate the game again. I want to see 3-2 ball games, and I think it takes away from that.
Yeah, you want to speed the ball game up. You take home runs away, but Major League Baseball is in this problem that NASCAR and every other sport is in. Attention span, it's got to be less than 3 hours, and preferably the game's got to be over in 2.5. And I think that's all the things that they're looking at is the attention span of fans, and going to your topic, extra innings. That's exactly why they're looking at different things for extra innings. Personally, one of my best times as a Cardinal fan is New York Mets, St. Louis Cardinals game. They've had several in New York that have went 15, 16, 17 innings. And as a kid, I've got my radio under my covers, listening until 2 o'clock, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, listening to the ball game. And I know Aaron did that because he never went to sleep. who was either reading or listening to a ball game. But I don't know. Tight ball games are interesting to me.
They are, and they're interesting to me in the playoffs. They're not interesting to me in the middle of a season where, you're thin on pitching anyways. And that's why I think that the concept is incredibly interesting, because it doesn't take much to end a guy's career. And we've seen that with a guy in Kevin Segrist, St. Louis Cardinal fans will remember that name. And I think that he was overused, dominant lefty for 2 seasons, but he was coming out of the bullpen, in the 6th inning or in the 12th inning or in the 18th inning against the Mets on a Wednesday night, in the middle of June. And I think that what it does is it gives you the ability to conserve arms. It gives you the ability to elongate careers, because you don't have those guys who are throwing 120 innings that shouldn't be throwing 120 innings because they're 8th inning setup men.
Well, I think that's, especially this year, I think this is the type of thing that we need to think about, because we're going to have, a protracted spring training once we get this thing up and going, assuming we get this thing up and going. And they've talked about raising the roster limits, but I think regardless of what happens, I think we're looking at more arm injuries this year, if we have a 2020 season, than we've ever seen before. So I think we need to do something to protect those arms, especially this year. But yeah, going forward, it's an interesting idea too.
I know Aaron's not as much up to date. One of the reasons why David Phelps was coming on tonight is we really didn't get a chance, David, to put a bow on, in your case, the girls' basketball season. So I'm going to give you kind of an open forum to talk about your girls and the year that your girls had.
Well, it was a really young team. I only had 2 seniors, Ducky and Emma, who did wonderful for us, but really, really young. There was times this year where we started 2 freshmen and 2 sophomores. And one of those freshmen, Claire Flynn, who prior to the season started, had big expectations for both Katie and Claire. And losing Claire, I thought was going to be pretty hard for us. And I think she would have fit in very well with our mixture. But still, we ended up winning 19 ball games. And a few games in there we probably could have won, but lost because of, young mistakes, coach's fault most of the time. Of course, Jared can attest to that. We make mistakes with our young kids too. That I think I put them in a couple of situations where early in the season we lost a close game to West Hancock, another one to Pittsfield, and a couple of games there that we probably, had I had back, would have changed how we played. But again, I was learning my young kids too, trying to figure out the best places for them. But Katie Flynn did a great job for us as a freshman, running the show. Her and Casey McKeon as sophomore. The player that probably came on the strongest this year for us was Gabby McGath. Denny and I talked all the time about her just being a matchup nightmare for teams. She's one of those kids that she's like a Nathan Gouchaw. She just goes and goes and goes. And she's a good rebounder. She can score from odd angles, and she can step out and hit that 15 to 18-foot jumper, or even step up behind the arc and hit one of those too. She doesn't have enough confidence yet in that shot, even though she is a really good ball player. But Belle Cook kind of took on the leadership role this year at the offensive end, and she's a pretty good defender. She's one of those sneaky defenders. But Belle averaged just about 14 points a game for us as a junior, and looking for big things for her next year. I think she's one of those kids. Also, she's a sneaky kind of a good. You look at Belle and you think, she's an average player, and then you look at the game effort. She's got 22 points and 8 rebounds and 4 steals and 5 assists. She's just one of those kids that she's a stat stuffer kind of kid. That she's sneaky good. And I think once you play her a few times, you realize, all right, we better take an eye on this kid who can score 30 on you, like she did against Pittsfield late in the year when we were struggling. She scored 18 of our 19 first half points. And it wasn't that I was calling her number. It's just through the natural flow of the game. She just was making shots. We were struggling, and she did what a leader does and decided, I got to score here, and kept us in the ball game. And then second half, others started to score, and Katie and Casey and Gabby finally got their rhythm, and we ended up pulling away and winning by 12 or 13. But she has that ability to take over games. So really looking forward to her. We have shooters like Macy Blintlinger, and an unsung hero like an Izzy Flynn inside. She's 6 foot tall, takes up space. And what people, I think, lose on Izzy is that she can guard 1 through 5. And I don't think people realize that about her, about how good she can defend. She can guard the big girls like the Liberty's big girl inside, the Izzy Gim girl, and she can step outside. And philosophically, I believe in switching everything. And she gets switched on to girls that are 5'2", 5'3", and she's got to get her butt down and stay in front of them. And she does an incredible job of playing defense. And she's one of those kids that sometimes it's hard to take off the floor because she is such a good defender. But she's also one of those girls that understands that late in games, she knows she's not a very good ball handler. And she knows that in a close ball game, she's going to be on the bench more than likely at the end of a ball game. And she's such a good teammate that she understands that. She understands when her role is important and when she's, relegated to being on the bench because other girls who can handle the ball or shoot free throws better than her are out there. She's a phenomenal teammate. And one of those girls that you have to have on your team if you're going to be successful. And there's so many other good girls. I mean, we went 10 deep some nights, 12 deep some nights, and sometimes out of necessity and sometimes out of just more girls are playing really well. And, even youngsters that I would have loved to have got to play more and in previous years would have got to play more. Something like Gracie Hedden, who did great things for us, in 5-6 years ago, Gracie might have started for us, but we're just so deep that, she's fighting for playing time every day in practice. And she's one of those kids that you got to put out there because she just plays so hard. And you got girls, too, like our juniors like Sadie Cassing and Kaya Beheimer, who work their butts off every day in practice and fight for playing time too, and do so well when they get into games. It's just, Denny and I talk about next year having 12 girls, that could potentially, play starter minutes for us, and really excited about the direction we're heading in. For the 6th straight year, we shot over 600 free throws. We're that attack the basket kind of a team, and have the girls that have bought in to the system that Denny and I are putting out there for them. And, Belle shot 227 free throws this year, more than some teams shoot. We just have girls that have adopted that mentality. And I think if you look back at somebody like Alexis Doyle, who set the tone for our program, she lived at the free throw line, shot 200 free throws, both her junior and senior year. She set the tone for the younger girls, which Belle was a freshman when she was a senior, and saw how hard she plays. And it's just the kind of mentality we do. We preach to them every day about playing hard and playing with heart and passion. And we play both ends of the floor with it. And really excited about the direction we're heading. I'm looking forward to next year, and hope we can get in the gym this summer and actually start working and getting some summer stuff in with these girls.
Kevin, from the broadcasting side, go ahead and your thoughts on the girls basketball program.
Yeah, I can't speak about it in glowing enough terms, Coach. You and I have talked how much I love that team. And Steve and I talked, if I would have known how good that girls team was going to be and how exciting they were going to be, I would have broadcast every single girls game by myself. I enjoyed that team so much. My biggest question to you, Coach, is you go into next year, you and I talked, and you kind of had a 20 game win. That was where you wanted to get this year. Super young. You're going to have a couple sophomores, a couple juniors. The senior and Macy. Where's your goal at for next year? And besides running into the buzzsaw that was Lewistown this past year, where do you think you can go?
Oh gosh, most coaches don't want to talk about how far we can go. It's kind of a bad omen, but I do have pretty high expectations for us. This year going in, I think I had the expectations of winning 17 to 20 games, somewhere in that range. I don't think a lot of people thought we would get that. Bragg Berman, who coaches Liberty, good guy. I talked to him late in the year, and he said that he had talked to a few other people who were surprised at how good we were going to be, but he said that he knew that we would be good, just knew what we were getting and what we had lost from the year before. He was one of the few guys, I think, that expected us to be there. But I really feel like we can compete for our conference championship. I feel like my expectation will be that we should win a regional next year and compete for a sectional championship. Still being relatively young, even next year, even though Belle and Macy and those girls will be seniors, we still have a lot of good young players. I'll be disappointed if we don't win a regional, and I'll be disappointed if we don't win our conference next year, and win 20 plus games. Our school record for girls in wins is 22 games. I'll be disappointed if we don't break that record next year as well.
Yeah, I could see you winning 4 or 5 more games this last year. Like you said, you're just that close in a lot of those cases.
Well, we lost 10 games, and only one of those was by double digits. We lost to Illini West at Beardstown after we had played Macomb an hour and a half before that. We played a lot of close ball games, both won and lost a lot of close games, but our 9 losses were all within striking distance. We were in every game we played this year, which is exciting. It's frustrating we lost some of those, but exciting that you're in games every night.
Well, there's no way in the Beardstown tournament that you should be playing a play-in game this next year. If you are, it's rigged. There is no way. I think one team of the play-in teams that won their second ball game. An hour and a half after you've just played a hard ball game, it's almost an impossible task. And Aaron, have they been doing that for a long time? Because you broadcast the games went back when you were in high school and college.
They weren't doing that back the last time that I broadcast that tournament, but let's be honest, that was about almost 15 years ago now. So that's something that's changed in the last 15 years.
Yep.
I think they expanded to 24 teams about a decade ago. So it's been about a long time. And it is a daunting challenge to win that second game. It just usually it's if you're matched up against one of the 7, 8, 9 seeds or 6, 7, 8 seed. That's about the only ones that ever get upset on that first matchup. Kind of thing.
Okay. Coach Hoots, any thoughts on the girls?
Oh, it's one of those things, being around the girls and Coach Phelps at school every day. I think the biggest thing, compliment I can give this group is how competitive they are. Normally you don't find, I would say every special group we've had at Brown County, they've been ultra competitive. I know he mentioned Nathan Goudshaw. We talked about Tanner, all those qualities of that competitiveness that these girls, they have. And I think the one thing that people don't understand how long they are. I mean, they're a long girls team, to play the in-your-face man-to-man defense that Coach Phelps likes to play, that length, and they're just probably going to get longer, and they're young. I think that's the biggest thing, that people don't realize is how young they actually were, and I know that's one thing when I take kids driving. I got to drive with Gabby and Gracie and trying to think who else I drove with. Those younger kids, when the driver's ed car, before the game, there wasn't one game where they didn't think they were going to win. And I think that's a big thing anymore with high school sports is they thought they were going to win every game. And with that competitive nature, I think the sky's the limit for this group because they're hungry. And I think, the biggest thing is, what Coach Phelps said is they accepted their roles. On any good team where you have as much talent as they have to know their role. Especially in today's society where they hear noise from everywhere, that them understanding their roles is a huge thing, and I know from the coaching aspect, these are the type of teams that you probably don't get any sleep on because you have so much talent because it's your job to push all the right buttons and you're going to second guess, if something doesn't go right, you'd rather have on basketball floor, you'd rather have 7 really good players and the rest can come in when you're up by 30. Your decisions are a whole lot easier. And I know, it makes for some sleepless nights and second guessing yourself and in-game substitutions, just because you are so talented. I know sometimes, as a coach, you lose sleep over those, but, I think the sky's the limit for this group, based on their competitiveness and their work ethic too. You go watch these girls in the weight room. I mean, they got some muscle definition on them. They're athletes, and I think that's the best compliment I give them. They're competitive athletes, and they just want to win, which is huge nowadays. So I think they're going to, get that 20 win the regional championship and hang some banners on the ceiling. That's for sure.
I think one of the things for me is in listening to you talk, I felt that way through the season. You can't just talk about 1 or 2 girls on that squad. You need to talk about everyone. And we think, what was it, Kevin, about the second game of the Lady Hornet Classic when it looked like everybody finally figured out what their role was. And that was earlier than I thought it was going to be. I thought that was going to be the whole tournament, that we'd just be figuring out who's going to do what. And it's like it clicked and the group came on board. And I use Emma as an example. You know, she's had to handle the ball and shoot, and that's really not the best part of her game in years past. She got to excel at what Emma was good at, and that's defense. And in the process, and talking with her, made her feel good because she was successful and she was being used in a way that she was most successful. You talked about Gracie Hedden. I think you and I talked about this in earlier years. The Flynn, she'd been playing with the Flynn twins, and she wouldn't have been a scorer on that team, but you watch her on the JV basketball squad, she's had to take a different role and hone her skills. But overall, I just can't say enough about this group. Kevin and I are probably signing up. The girls are going to be mad at us because we're probably going to sign up for every girls basketball game that there is. Nothing against the boys, but you know, your girls are exciting. You coach really well, and their response to you is really good.
I appreciate that. Well, you also know that just today I finally finalized with Carrollton. We're going to do varsity boys girls like we do with Camp Point. We'll be hosting that next year as well as the Camp Point one too. So it'll be a night where you get to see both teams. Looking forward to that. It should be 2 good ball games both nights. And we're hosting both. So I'm excited about that for next year as well.
Kevin,
And,
by the way, I've already called the girls games. You can have the boys games on those doubleheader nights.
Well, if I call the girls games, I get to say scrum at least 20 times, and that's your favorite word. So
yeah, it is. It is. Well, Coach, that the year has been really good, and I know Aaron, you when you were broadcasting a lot, you enjoyed watching the girls because it's a different style of ball game. You would love this squad of girls. You would love broadcasting them because it's exciting through the whole thing. The only thing I have to say is a couple of things. Number one, girls basketball is a contact sport. I just want to make that evidently clear. It's rougher than some boys football games. I've seen teams that can't tackle as good as these girls can. And I mean, overall, the other thing is you're going to have some tough competition. Unity, if I remember right, Unity's young. There's going to be squads like Triopia that graduated quite a few people. The Liberty, I believe, graduated some people too, correct? But
Yeah,
we're going to have some good young ball clubs out there all around us.
Yeah, Unity will probably be in our area, the one that we're competitive with. They're young too. They got a really good big girl inside. Ron Castling's granddaughter, who'll be a junior next year, who's a really good outside player. They'll lose their best player this year, but they're not going to lose a whole lot because they're still going to be really athletic around her, and we'll be young like we are. I mean, we're kind of mirror images of one another, other than the fact that they're losing their best player, and we're retaining scoring wise most of ours. But I want to touch on what you talked about Emma too. I couldn't be more proud of Emma and the role she accepted this year as that defensive player. And she understood her limitations on offense, but she grew because of that. She knew and knows that she's not a great ball handler, and she turned the ball over less this year than she did the year before because she understood that and knew when she comes in games, I'm just dogging the ball. We put her on the ball and just say, get after it. And she just relished that and did it great. And I want to touch on Claire for a second too. Denny actually sent me a text to remind me that as hard as it is that Claire lost her freshman year, I think it was a blessing for some of those other girls around her, blessing for her sister, that she had to figure out how to play without her sister, because that's who she looked for, for 4 previous years, 5th through 8th grade. But it might have been the best for, like you said, Gracie Hedden, who had to play at the JV level and become that offensive force that she just wasn't. If you watched her play in 8th grade, she disappeared offensively. Still a good defender, but she was afraid to shoot. But boy, you put her in a game now and she touches the ball, it's going to go up, or she's going to take it to the hole, and it just helped her blossom. So unfortunately, Claire missed her freshman year, but it made her stronger too. And she cannot wait to get on the basketball court. And I so look forward to seeing her just tear it up. I fully expect her to just be dominant next year because she wants to play so badly.
Two people I want to talk about. Gabby McGath, you talked about her, how she can play inside, outside. To me, she was your strongest person with a good shot to the bucket. She went to the bucket with authority down underneath. She rebounded with authority. She's one of those people you just love playing ball. Izzy Flynn, she seems big and bulky to people, but the thing you miss with her, she's got long arms and fairly quick hands. How many block shots did she have this year?
Well, she was second. Her sister, Katie, led us in block shots, but she had in the mid 27 or 28, I think, block shots. Just a sneaky kind of defender, because I think Team Spot thought, well, this girl gets switched on to me and I'm a 5'3" point guard, I'm going to go around her, and you just can't. She's so long, like her sisters. Is a really good rebounder, really good post defender too. Blocks out well, rebounds strong. And she made a big jump this year in the fact that as a sophomore, she really didn't like a lot of contact, but she was able to absorb more of it this year and kind of got mad at times, and which is a good thing. And I look forward to her next year really not being afraid of anybody and banging with people. And she really has blossomed a lot as well.
Okay. Final thoughts on anything for everybody as we come to the close of the hour here. We'll just go around the horn. David Phelps, any thoughts on sports or anything you want to throw out here at the end?
Well, I'm still hopeful, of course, that the IHSA will get to play some spring sports. I know it's kind of a long shot at this point, but it would be great for them to get that opportunity. But if not, let's be ready to get back after it in August and be ready for football and volleyball and golf. Get after it again.
Okay, Jared Hoots.
I don't know. I don't have any good thoughts. I need some competition. I'm dying for some competition right now. So if anybody wants to set up a competition online or something, I'm ready to do something. I don't know. I've gone too long without playing against somebody. My wife and kids don't count. I was trying to get her to play me in basketball or something yesterday. That didn't work out too well. So she's probably about ready to kill me right now. So
is she beating you in the board games? Is that the problem? Is she killing you there?
No, we don't. We're not nice and let her win over here. No, it's we like to win over here. We're really competitive. There were many nights where we played volleyball together whenever we were still in college and our first few years at Brown County, where we might not have spoke to each other on the way home after a loss. So, that's how competitive we are.
All right, Kevin, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think to Coach Hoots' point, I was thinking about asking Steve if we could do like an around the horn thing, but the nepotism of him and his son would really worry me. I feel like he'd let Aaron win all the time. I don't know.
As long as Nick don't win, we're fine.
We would sabotage Nick for sure. But my real final thoughts is, I put up as my background tonight our 11 or 10, 11-year-old or 9 and 10-year-old team from last year, and I miss those boys so much. And hopefully their parents put them on Facebook or YouTube and let them watch this, and just miss the competition. And I miss the family that we became last summer, and I was looking forward to it this summer, and hopefully we'll still get a chance to do it. But boys, if you're listening, I miss you. Coach D misses you, and get after it, get outside, be competitive no matter what you're doing, and love you, boys.
Okay, Aaron.
Just on the idea of nepotism, real quick. In the Surratt households, there is a strong tradition of not letting kids win just because they're kids. I showed no mercy last week in a game of Monopoly, and I think I broke 3 hearts. So that's, you don't need to worry about that if we go there. But my last kind of quick thought, two things on Illinois sports. We talked about the spring sport athletes a little bit, and Illinois golf is going to have its 2 best senior players, Giovanni, I can't remember his last name, I can't say it probably right either, Tadato, and then Michael Fiegels are going to be coming back next year. So for the, I don't think there's any question, the most successful, consistent athletics program at Illinois, golf will be right back in the thick of things next year with a couple of seniors. And football got a couple of transfer commitments within the last week, an offensive lineman and a wide receiver. So Illinois football looks to be in a good place. We just need another defensive back or 2.
And I will tell you what he says is true, Jared, about the Surratts, and it ran over to the other side of my grandparents also. My grandfather would never let me win at cards or anything. He would politely, when it was over, go back and re-put the deck back and re-put everything and show you what you did wrong. But he was not going to let you win. You were going to learn from your mistakes. And yeah, it gets pretty fierce in the competition around the Surratt household when everybody gets together. So with that, guys, I really appreciate you stopping by. David Phelps, can't join the two names together. David Phelps, Coach, we appreciate you joining us. We may have you back at another time if you'd like to come back.
It was fun.
Much better than Nick, Coach.
Low
Way up
bar.
to the shoes.
There is a low bar there, Kevin. Oh, by the way, you're a Cardinal fan too, right, Kevin? Or right, David?
He's a Yankees fan.
Is it?
Lifelong Yankee fan.
Oh,
that is
well,
no
that's
better than the
better
Cubs.
Yeah.
No, that's equally.
It's
bad.
it's 1A. I mean,
He's a step up.
Yeah.
he's
27.
up a little bit.
I don't know
news
about that.
That news for the Yankees today is one of their co-owners, one of the Steinbrenner boys, passed away at 61 years
Hank.
old. Yep. So with that, appreciate you all. And we'll be back, folks. Next week, we'll try Facebook again right out of the gate because we'd like to have your questions out there. I'm sure that there's some doozies out there. Plus, if that's not going to happen, I'll make sure that this gets set up to where we can take questions over YouTube. Apparently, I've got it kid-friendly. So when it's kid-friendly, you cannot do discussions online with Facebook. I got to get that changed, and I'll get with our technical guru, Nick, on that. But for David Phelps, Jared Hoots, Kevin Dieterle, Aaron Surratt, and Steve Surratt, good night. God bless. Let me. Okay. End.